I work for a forestry company, and my job involves monitoring the remote wilderness areas in the Rocky Mountains in the United States. It's a job that I love, despite the inherent dangers that come with working in the great outdoors. Deep drop-offs, dangerous animals, trails so remote it would be impossible to find your way back. The conditions in the mountains make my job challenging to say the least, but it's a risk that I'm willing to take. And I'm usually confident about knowing what dangers might be around and how to avoid them. But this day, I came face to face with a mystery that still haunts me to my very core. It was a cold, snowy winter morning when I set out on my patrol. I had drawn the short straw that day and was tasked with patrolling a section of the woods that we barely ever venture into because it's not really accessible for most parts of the year. The trees were weighed down heavily with a thick blanket of snow, and the air was so thin and sharp that it hurt the inside of my nose when I breathed it in. As I walked deeper into the forest, I noticed something odd in the distance. There was a faint glimmer of something silver that caught my eye, and I knew that I had to investigate. As I approached the source of the glimmer, I saw that it was a tent, which wouldn't be that rare of a sight if I wasn't so far into this part of the mountains. I had to use a snowmobile along with hours of hiking to get in this deep. Who else in their right minds would be out here? And on what planet would they think that it was a good idea to pitch a tent and stay the night? I expected to find the worst, but as I got closer, I realized a frozen body would not be the worst thing I could find. I took a deep, stinging breath and looked closer at the tent, quickly realizing that it had a giant hole on the side of it and no campers inside. The fabric was shredded as if someone had used a knife to cut their way out. The contents of the tent were scattered everywhere. Sleeping bags, cooking utensils, and clothes were strewn about haphazardly. It was as if the campers had been so afraid of something outside their tents that they cut their way out and fled in terror, leaving everything behind. Not to sound like a giant coward, but I immediately called for backup. It was part of our roles that we let authorities be involved with anything that might be a crime scene, and that's exactly what this looked like to me. And to be honest, I was a bit freaked out and wanted more people to be around me before I started searching. Waiting for the others took hours, and the entire time I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched and that whatever scared the campers from their tent may still be here. Finally, I could hear the snowmobiles approaching, and soon the sounds of talking and radio chatter. My backup was here. We searched the area for any signs of the missing campers, but with the amount of snow that had fallen, it was almost impossible to find tracks. We all walked in different directions until finally we started finding the campers some distance away from their campsite. That's when things got really weird. The first body we found was a young man lying face down in a shallow frozen stream. It looked like he was still in just his sleeping attire. No coat or gloves or boots. Nothing to protect him from the cold. How scared would you have to be to run into a forest with no coat and to choose hypothermia as your best option? Now, my first guess was drugs. Maybe these campers were experimenting with drugs and had a bad trip and made some stupid mistakes and froze to death. That would be a plausible explanation if it wasn't for the fact that the body didn't look frozen at all. In fact, it barely showed any discoloration or signs of cold. I've been involved with other cases of rescue and recovery in the past, and it always looks the same. I don't mean to sound disrespectful, but usually bodies turn into people sickles. They freeze almost immediately out here in the snow and take on a classic frozen color and appearance. This guy looked like he could still be alive, although it was clear from his vital signs that he was gone. The falling snow was building up on his body, meaning he had been laying here for hours or maybe even days. He should have been frozen and blue. It just didn't make any sense. As we combed the area, we found more and more bizarre things that defied explanation. We found more bodies, all in the same condition, clearly dead but showing no signs of freeze or decay. We even found one body sitting upright on a tree branch about 10 feet in the air. The person looked so alive from a distance that a member of my team was talking to her out loud, thinking it might be a survivor. It wasn't just the odd way we were finding people that made it creepy. It's really hard to explain and to put into words, but everyone involved would say that there was a strange feeling in the area. It was as if the woods themselves were alive and watching us. The longer we stayed in the area, the more uneasy we felt. It was like we were being watched by something unseen, something that wanted to keep us from discovering the truth about what happened to those campers. We worked tirelessly to piece together the puzzle, but every time we thought we were getting close to the answer, something else would happen to throw us off course. We managed to get all 6 of the bodies back to civilization, which was no easy task, and took the combined efforts of everyone in our crew and all the police and firefighters in our small town. We even eventually learned the names of the victims and realized they were very experienced hikers and travelers and were no strangers to surviving in the woods. There were also no sign of drugs in their body, which was a shock to me, but the biggest shock of all happened when the doctor did a full autopsy. All the campers died from severe internal injuries. He said he usually doesn't see this level of injury in highway car crashes. The force that it would take to make this much damage would be like falling from a 10-story building onto concrete. But in those cases, there are clear injuries on the outside of the body as well. It made no sense how unharmed these campers looked on the outside, even though the injuries on their insides were so severe. To this day, I don't know what really happened to those campers or what kind of force could have caused such strange injuries. But I do know one thing. The wilderness can be a dangerous and unpredictable place, and sometimes the things that lurk in the snowy shadows are better left undiscovered.